Hello, everyone. To start off, I would like you all to picture someone having a heart attack. What do they look like? If you pictured a man hunched over, clutching his chest, you wouldn't be alone. In fact, when you Google person having a heart attack, the results are overwhelmingly male. In these first 18 images that pop up, there's actually only one woman present, and she's not even having a heart attack. She's just helping a man who is having a heart attack. This is pretty problematic because it reinforces the misconception that heart disease mainly affects men, when in reality, heart disease is the leading cause of death for both men and women. But despite affecting both sexes, men and women do experience heart disease differently, and this can show up in symptoms, disease progression, and outcomes. However, because women have been historically underrepresented in cardiovascular research, the biological mechanisms underlying these sex differences remain incompletely understood, making it difficult to develop treatments that work well for everyone. One example of this is coronary artery disease, the leading cause of heart attacks. In CAD, plaque, which is the yellow stuff you see in this image, builds up in the arteries that supply blood to the heart. When this plaque builds up to a certain extent, it can disrupt blood flow, causing a heart attack. However, men and women can and do develop different types of plaques, and this can affect how they experience heart attacks. For example, females are more likely to have fibrous plaques, and these plaques are made up of tougher, scar-like tissue that are prone to what we call erosion, in which the surface of the plaque gradually wears away over time. You can think of this as like road damage, in which the surface of the road is worn down because of traffic and weather. When this happens in the body and the surface of the plaque becomes damaged, a blood clot can begin to form in that area, which would eventually lead to a heart attack. However, males are more likely to have fatty plaques, and these plaques are made up of a large core of cholesterol covered by a thin cap. And these plaques are more prone to rupture, in which that thin cap covering the plaque suddenly bursts open. You can think of this as like a pothole suddenly collapsing in the road, immediately blocking the flow of traffic. When this happens in an artery, the blood clot will immediately form, which can cause a heart attack. Like a pothole, plaque rupture is often considered more immediate and catastrophic, but when left untreated, plaque erosion can also cause the same serious problems down the line. And because these processes are so different, understanding the mechanisms behind them can really help researchers and clinicians actually develop more precise ways to diagnose and treat them. And so, in my postdoctoral work, I specifically focus on the molecular mechanisms behind these sex differences. To do that, I studied the cells that line blood vessels called endothelial cells, and these cells are very important for the development of plaque and its stability. In order to look at the sex differences, I collect RNA from human plaque samples from both males and females, and to look at the gene activity with this sequenced RNA, I look at things like this called a volcano plot. In this volcano plot, each dot represents a gene. And in this plot, it typically looks like an explosion from a central point, like a volcano, in which the dots that are more spread out to the left and right indicate greater differences between males and females, and the dots that are higher up are the ones we're more confident in. So in this example, any purple dot represents a gene that's more active in females, and green dots represent genes that are more active in males. So using these approaches, I've identified a set of candidate genes that we believe are regulating some of these sex differences. For example, collagen 4A1 is a gene more active in females, and we know this gene is also very important for vessel wall stability and structure, which leads us to believe it's having a role in plaque fibrous, and so we think that this is making the plaques more stable. But in order to really understand its function, we need to do some more analysis and see if we can find ways to target it for treatment. So overall, the goal of my postdoctoral work and hopefully future lab is to leverage known clinical sex differences to identify molecular mechanisms and use those to translate them into better ways to treat cardiovascular disease. Thank you.